My name is Harper, and I am 28 years old. 2 months ago, my father threw a massive party to celebrate kicking me out of the family home. All of our relatives came to watch. Some of them laughed. 2 weeks later, that same man stood at my apartment door begging me to come back. Before I tell you how we got there, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you have not already. Now let me take you back to where everything began. My mother, Caroline, was the kind of woman who made everyone around her feel seen. She taught third grade at the local elementary school, and every afternoon when I came home, the smell of something baking would greet me at the door. Chocolate chip cookies, banana bread, apple pie in the fall. She believed that love was best expressed through small, consistent acts of care. Every night before bed, she would brush my hair and tell me stories about brave girls who conquered their fears. Her favorite thing to say to me was this: "You are my brightest star, Harper. Never let anyone dim your light." I believed her. I believed every word. My father, Gerald, was different, but back then his differences complemented her warmth. He was a quiet man, serious and hardworking. He had started his construction company from nothing, just a pickup truck and a dream, he used to say. By the time I was 10, his company had grown to employ over 50 people. He worked long hours, but when he came home, he was present. He would ask about my school day. He would listen to my mother talk about her students. We ate dinner together every single night. I remember one Thanksgiving when I was 9 years old. My father carved the turkey while my mother arranged the side dishes just so. I sat at the table watching them move around each other like dancers who knew every step by heart. My father caught my eye and winked. "That is love, Harper," he said, nodding toward my mother. "Find someone who makes the ordinary feel extraordinary." I tucked that memory away like a treasure. Then everything changed. It started with a cough that would not go away. My mother ignored it for weeks, blaming allergies, blaming the dry autumn air. By the time she went to the doctor, the cancer had already spread. Stage 4, breast cancer. I was 11 years old when I learned that some words can shatter your entire world. The next year was a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and watching my mother become smaller and smaller. Her hair fell out in clumps. Her cheeks hollowed, but even then she never stopped smiling at me. Even when she could barely lift her hand, she would reach for mine. "I am so proud of you, baby girl," she whispered. "You are going to do amazing things." She passed away 3 days after my 12th birthday. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. Her final words to me were these: "Take care of your father, sweetheart. He is not as strong as he looks." I promised her I would. I had no idea what the promise would cost me. The funeral was a fog. People came and went, offering condolences that sounded like static. My father stood like a statue, accepting handshakes and hugs, but giving nothing back. He did not cry at the service. He did not cry at the burial. He did not cry when we came home to a house that suddenly felt too big and too empty. He just went to his office and closed the door. In the weeks and months that followed, I learned to fend for myself. I made my own breakfast before school. I did my own laundry. I taught myself to cook simple meals from recipes I found in my mother's handwritten cookbook. My father was there physically present, but emotionally he had retreated to somewhere I could not reach. He threw himself into work, leaving before dawn and returning after dark. On the rare occasions when we sat at the dinner table together, the silence was suffocating. I tried everything to bring him back. I got straight A grades. I joined the debate team. I won a regional spelling bee. Each time I brought home an award or a report card, I would show him, hoping for a glimmer of the father I remembered. He would nod, say, "That is nice, Harper," and return to whatever he was doing. The praise I craved never came, but I kept trying because that is what my mother asked me to do. Take care of your father. Be patient. He is hurting too. 3 years passed in this strange limbo. Then one day, my father came home with a woman I had never seen before. Her name was Lorraine. She was tall and elegant, with perfectly styled blonde hair and nails that looked like they had never seen a day of hard work. She smiled at me, but the smile did not reach her eyes. Those eyes assessed me the way a shopper might assess a piece of furniture, deciding whether I was worth keeping or discarding. Lorraine worked in real estate, my father explained. They had met at a networking event. She was a widow herself, with a daughter around my age. He said it like these facts should make me happy, like shared grief should bond us together. I wanted to believe it could. I wanted my father to be happy again. So when he told me they were getting married, I smiled and said congratulations, even though something cold settled in my stomach. Lorraine moved in 2 months later, bringing her daughter Brittany with her. Brittany was 13, a year younger than me. She had her mother's blonde hair and her mother's cold eyes. From the very first day, she looked at me like I was an intruder in my own home. She took my room, the one with the bay window that overlooked the garden my mother had planted. Lorraine said it was because Brittany needed more space. I was moved to the small bedroom at the end of the hall, the one that had been used for storage. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself things would get better once we all adjusted. I was wrong. The division started small. Brittany received a new wardrobe for the start of school, while I wore the same clothes from the year before. When I asked my father about back-to-school shopping, Lorraine answered before he could. "Money is tight, Harper. You understand." But 3 days later, Brittany came home with designer jeans and shoes that cost more than my entire closet combined. Lorraine assigned me chores that grew longer each week. I was responsible for cleaning the bathrooms, vacuuming the entire house, doing the laundry for everyone, and cooking dinner on the nights when Lorraine did not feel like ordering takeout. When I pointed out that Brittany did not have any chores, Lorraine laughed. "Brittany has after-school activities," she said. "You need to learn responsibility." My only after-school activity was surviving. My father said nothing. When I tried to talk to him about the unfairness, he looked uncomfortable and changed the subject. "Lorraine is just trying to help you become a responsible adult," he said once. "Be grateful you have someone who cares." I stopped trying to talk to him after that. Brittany took pleasure in making my life difficult. She would leave messes for me to clean, spilling juice on the counter or tracking mud through the hallways right after I had finished mopping. She told lies about me to Lorraine, claiming I had insulted her or stolen her things. Lorraine always believed her daughter and punished me with extra chores or by taking away privileges I barely had to begin with. One incident stands out among the rest. I was 16, and I had spent 3 weeks working on a research paper for my advanced English class. It was about the symbolism in my mother's favorite novel, and I had poured my heart into it. The night before it was due, I went to print it and discovered that the file had been deleted from my computer. I searched everywhere, panicking. Then I heard Brittany laughing in her room. When I confronted her, she just smiled. "Oops," she said. "Must have been an accident." I stayed up all night rewriting the paper from memory. I submitted it 15 minutes before the deadline, exhausted and devastated. When I told my father what happened, hoping he would finally see what Brittany was really like, he shook his head. "You must have deleted it yourself by mistake, Harper. Brittany would never do something like that. Do not be so dramatic." The message was clear. In this house, Brittany could do no wrong, and I could do no right. I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped expecting kindness. I focused on the one thing I could control: my education. I studied harder than anyone I knew. I took every AP class available. I tutored other students for extra money. I was going to get out of this house, and I was going to build a life where no one could make me feel invisible. My determination paid off. When I was 18, I received a full scholarship to a prestigious university 300 miles away. I majored in computer science, a field that felt like a refuge. Computers made sense. They followed rules. They rewarded hard work with predictable results. Unlike people. The day I left for college, I packed my bags and loaded them into my second-hand car, a vehicle I had bought with money I had saved from tutoring, and my part-time job at a coffee shop. My father stood on the porch with Lorraine watching me go. Brittany was not even there. Lorraine did not hide her satisfaction. "Well," she said, "at least now we do not have to worry about paying for your education." My father said nothing. He just nodded and waved. I drove away without looking back. College was a revelation. For the first time in 6 years, I could breathe. I made friends who valued me. I excelled in my classes. I discovered I had a gift for building software systems for seeing patterns and connections that others missed. By the time I graduated at 22, I had job offers from 3 different tech companies. I chose the one that offered the best salary and moved to a city where I knew no one. It felt like freedom. But even freedom could not sever the ties completely. My father called occasionally, always with small talk and nothing more. Sometimes he mentioned that the company was doing well. Sometimes he complained about employees or clients. He never asked about my life. He never said he was proud. I accepted these calls because I still remembered my mother's words. "Take care of your father. He is not as strong as he looks. Then came the crisis that would change everything. I was 22, fresh out of college, and 3 months into my new job when my father called with panic in his voice. I had never heard him sound like that before. "Harper," he said, "I need help. The company is in trouble. Big trouble." The story came out in fragments. His IT manager had quit without notice, taking all the passwords and system knowledge with him. The accounting software had crashed, losing months of financial records. 3 major contracts were due for renewal, but no one could access the documentation. The company was hemorrhaging money, and my father had no idea how to stop the bleeding. I knew I should have said no. I knew that Lorraine and Brittany were still living in that house, still enjoying the wealth my father had built while treating me like garbage. But when I heard the fear in his voice, I heard something else too. I heard the man who used to wink at me across the Thanksgiving table. I heard the man my mother loved. And I heard her voice asking me to take care of him. I flew home that weekend. For 3 weeks, I barely slept. I rebuilt the entire technical infrastructure from the ground up. I created a custom accounting system that automated most of the bookkeeping. I organized the contract database, set up secure backups, and implemented a new email system. I saved the company from collapse. The contracts were renewed. The clients were retained. My father kept his business. When it was all over, he shook my hand and said, "Thanks, Harper. I appreciate it." That was all. No celebration, no recognition, no offer of compensation. I had worked 80-hour weeks for nothing but a handshake. I should have walked away then. I should have recognized the pattern. But I did not. Instead, I made the mistake that would define the next 6 years of my life. I agreed to continue managing the systems remotely. I told myself it was just maintenance. I told myself it would not take much time. I told myself that maybe finally my father would see my value. The maintenance became more consuming than I had anticipated. Software needs updates, servers need monitoring, databases need optimization. I found myself spending 10 to 15 hours a week keeping my father's company running, all while holding down my full-time job at the tech company. I never asked for payment. I never even asked for acknowledgement. I just kept doing it year after year because somewhere deep inside me, the little girl who had lost her mother still hoped her father would love her. The irony was not lost on me. I had become essential to a company that did not know I existed. All the systems ran on my personal accounts protected by my passwords. I paid for the cloud storage out of my own pocket, planning to submit the receipts for reimbursement, but never actually doing it. If I disappeared tomorrow, the entire operation would collapse within days. But no one knew this except me. Meanwhile, my actual career flourished. I was promoted twice in 4 years. By 26, I was a senior software developer, earning a salary that put me in the top 5% of earners in my age group. I bought a nice apartment in a good neighborhood. I built a retirement fund. I traveled to Europe for vacation. On paper, I had everything. But every Sunday night, I would log into my father's company systems and make sure everything was running smoothly. I would fix bugs and troubleshoot errors and answer questions from employees who thought they were emailing some faceless IT department. I told myself I was being a good daughter. I told myself I was honoring my mother's memory. I told myself a lot of things that were not true. Lorraine and Brittany never knew about my involvement. My father made sure of that. He did not want to give me credit because giving me credit would mean admitting he needed me. And in Lorraine's household, I was supposed to be the failure. I was supposed to be the ungrateful burden who had taken advantage of their generosity. Any evidence to the contrary would disrupt the narrative that kept Lorraine's world spinning, so the secret stayed hidden. For 6 years, I was the invisible backbone of a company that supported a family that despised me. I kept waiting for the moment when my father would finally see the truth. That moment came, but not in the way I expected. The phone call arrived on a Tuesday evening. My father's voice was curt, businesslike. "Harper," he said, "I need you to come home this Saturday. It is important." Before I could ask why he had already hung up, I spent the rest of the week wondering what could be so urgent. Maybe he was ill. Maybe he was finally going to acknowledge everything I had done for the company. Maybe after all these years he wanted to repair our relationship. I let myself hope. I should have known better. When I pulled into the driveway that Saturday afternoon, my stomach dropped. The house was surrounded by cars, expensive cars. I recognized some of them as belonging to aunts and uncles and cousins I had not seen in years. Others were unfamiliar. There had to be at least 40 or 50 vehicles spilling out of the driveway and lining both sides of the street. I walked toward the backyard where I could hear music and laughter. A catering team was setting up tables of food. A bartender was mixing drinks. Someone had hung decorations from the trees. It looked like a wedding or an anniversary celebration. But my father spotted me before I could figure out what was happening. Harper! He called out, his voice carrying across the lawn. Come over here. There is something I need to say. I walked toward him, aware that everyone had stopped talking. 50 pairs of eyes tracked my movement across the grass. Lorraine stood beside my father, a glass of champagne in her hand, and a smile on her face that made my blood run cold. Brittany was behind her phone, raised, recording everything. My father waited until I was standing directly in front of him. Then he raised his own glass and addressed the crowd. Everyone, he announced, I want to thank you all for coming today. This is a special occasion. After many years, I have finally decided to do something I should have done a long time ago. He paused for dramatic effect. Today, I am officially cutting Harper out of my life and out of this family. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. My father continued, Harper has been a burden on this family for too long. She has taken and taken without giving anything back. She has been ungrateful, disrespectful, and difficult. From this day forward, she is no longer my daughter. She is not welcome in this house. She will receive nothing from my estate. As far as I am concerned, she does not exist. Someone in the crowd laughed. Then another. Then applause scattered through the gathering like a disease. I looked around, searching for a single sympathetic face. My Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, was staring at the ground. My cousin David was whispering to his wife. No one spoke up. No one defended me. Lorraine stepped forward, her smile widening. We just wanted to make it official, she said sweetly. Consider this your farewell party. Brittany cackled behind her phone. This is going to get so many views, she said. I felt something break inside me. Not my heart. My heart had been cracked for years. No, this was something else. This was the final thread of hope, the last belief that my father might someday love me, snapping under the weight of public humiliation. I looked at my father, really looked at him for what felt like the first time. He was 62 years old, gray-haired and jowly, standing in front of a crowd of people, and denouncing his own daughter like she was a business liability. He did not look evil. He looked small. He looked like a man who had surrendered his own judgment to a woman who told him what he wanted to hear. I took a breath. Then another. When I spoke, my voice was steady. I understand, Father. I wish you well. I turned and walked back across the lawn. Behind me, I heard cheers and laughter and the clinking of glasses raised in celebration. Brittany shouted something mocking that I did not catch. Someone called out good riddance. I kept walking. I got in my car. I drove away. I made it 3 miles before I had to pull over. Then, parked on the shoulder of a country road, I let myself feel everything I had been holding back. I cried until I could not breathe. I screamed until my throat was raw. I pounded the steering wheel until my hands ached. Then, when there was nothing left, I drove home. And I made a decision. Sunday morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a strange sense of clarity. I made myself coffee and sat at my kitchen table thinking about the last 16 years. My mother's death, Lorraine's cruelty, Brittany's sabotage, my father's indifference, the endless cycle of trying to earn love from people who had no intention of giving it. My mother had asked me to take care of my father. I had honored that promise for 16 years, but she had also told me something else. Never let anyone dim your light. Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten the second part. I had let them dim my light almost to the point of extinction. Not anymore. I opened my laptop and began composing an email. The subject line was simple: transition of technical services. The content was professional and direct. Dear Gerald, this email serves as formal notice that all technical services I have been providing to Dawson Construction will be terminated effective 1 week from today. The following systems are currently managed through my personal accounts and will no longer be accessible after the transition date: primary accounting software and all financial records, contract management database, cloud storage for company documents, email server and all associated accounts, website hosting and domain registration, customer relationship management system. I recommend you engage a professional IT services company immediately to establish new systems. Based on standard industry timelines, building replacement infrastructure will require approximately 2 to 3 months and will cost between $150,000 and $200,000. I have attached a detailed inventory of all systems and a basic transition guide. If you wish to discuss this matter, you may reply to this email within the next 48 hours. Regards, Harper Dawson. I read the email twice, checking for errors. Then, I pressed send. My phone rang within 30 minutes. I let it go to voicemail. A text followed. Harper, this is ridiculous, call me back. Then another call. Then a voicemail from Lorraine, her voice dripping with condescension. Harper, stop being so dramatic. Your father is very busy. Whatever game you are playing needs to end now. I did not respond to any of them. For the next 7 days, I went about my life as normal. I went to work. I cooked dinner. I exercised. I read books. I ignored the increasingly frantic messages from my father's company. Employees were asking me to fix things, unaware that their boss had publicly disowned me just days ago. I forwarded their request to Gerald's personal email without comment. On day 4, Gerald called from an unknown number. I answered before I realized what I was doing. Harper, he said, his voice strained, this has gone far enough. I need you to restore access to the systems. I am afraid that is not possible, I replied calmly. As I stated in my email, the transition is happening on schedule. You have 3 days to implement alternative solutions. Be reasonable. You cannot just shut down an entire company. I am not shutting anything down. I am simply withdrawing the services I have been providing for free for the past 6 years. Services you apparently believed were unnecessary since you decided to publicly humiliate and disown the person providing them. There was a long pause. Look, he said finally, things got out of hand at the party. Lorraine thought it would be a good idea. I did not realize you would react this way. You did not realize I would react to being publicly mocked and disowned by my own father. What reaction did you expect exactly? He had no answer to that. The transition happens on Sunday at midnight, I said. I suggest you use the remaining time wisely. I hung up and blocked the number. Sunday came. At midnight, I logged into all the systems one final time and initiated the shutdown sequence. I had given them fair warning. I had provided documentation. I had offered a reasonable transition period. They had chosen to ignore all of it. Monday morning, my phone exploded with messages. But they were not from Gerald, or Lorraine, or Brittany. They were from employees at Dawson Construction, panicking because nothing worked. The accounting system showed only error messages. The contract database was inaccessible. Emails bounced back as undeliverable. Even the website was down. I responded to each message with the same template. I am no longer providing technical services to Dawson Construction. Please direct all inquiries to Gerald Dawson. The chaos unfolded over the next 2 weeks like a slow-motion disaster. I heard updates from former employees who had my personal contact information. 3 major clients pulled their contracts because the company could not produce required documentation. A lawsuit was threatened over a missed deadline. The accounting department could not process payroll on time, causing several employees to quit in frustration. An IT consulting firm was brought in, but they estimated 3 months minimum to rebuild what I had created. The total financial damage was estimated at nearly $1 million. And counting. Through it all, I felt remarkably little. Not satisfaction, not guilt. Just a quiet recognition that actions have consequence. My father had spent 16 years ignoring my contributions and allowing his new family to abuse me. Now he was learning exactly what those contributions had been worth. Lorraine and Brittany, I heard, were furious, but not at Gerald. They blamed me for sabotaging the company, refusing to acknowledge that I had simply stopped doing something I was never obligated to do in the first place. It takes a special kind of delusion to mistreat someone for years and then be outraged when they stop helping you. 2 weeks after the shutdown, my doorbell rang. I was not expecting visitors. When I looked through the peephole and saw my father standing in the hallway holding a bouquet of flowers and looking like he had not slept in days, I considered not opening the door at all. But something made me reach for the handle. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was closure. Maybe it was the ghost of my mother still hoping for reconciliation. Gerald looked 10 years older than he had at the party. His clothes were wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. His shoulders slumped with a defeat I had never seen in him before. "Harper," he said, his voice cracking. "Please, can we talk?" I stepped aside to let him in. He shuffled past me, looking around my apartment like he was seeing it for the first time. which I realized he was. In all the years I had lived here, he had never once visited. I gestured to the couch. He sat down heavily. I took the chair across from him and waited. "The company is falling apart," he said finally. "We have lost 4 major contracts. 2 employees filed complaints with the labor board over late paychecks. My accountant says we might have to declare bankruptcy." I did not respond. "Harper, I need you to come back. I will pay you, a real salary, whatever you want. I will tell everyone how important you are. I will give you a title Chief Technology Officer, whatever you want to be called. Just please, help me." His desperation hung in the air between us. I studied his face looking for something: remorse, shame, love. I was not sure what I hoped to find. "Why did you do it?" I asked quietly. "The party. Inviting everyone to watch you disown me." Why? Gerald rubbed his face with both hands. "Lorraine said it would give us closure. She said you were holding on too tightly, coming around too often, and that a clean break would be better for everyone. She said it would help you move on. And you believed her." I do not know what I believed. He looked up at me, and for a moment I saw genuine anguish in his eyes. "I have not known what I believe for a long time. After your mother died, everything got so hard. Lorraine made things easier. She took charge. She made decisions. I just went along with it. She made decisions about me, I said. About your daughter. You let her turn our family into a hierarchy, where I was always at the bottom. I know. You let Brittany torment me for years. I know. You never stood up for me. Not once. I know, Harper. I know." His voice broke. "And I am so sorry." The words I had waited 16 years to hear. But hearing them now, they felt hollow. Too little. Too late. "Let me ask you something," I said. "If the company was fine right now, would you be here? Would you be apologizing?" He hesitated. That told me everything. That is what I thought. I leaned back in my chair. "You do not miss me, Father. You miss what I did for you. There is a difference. That is not true." He reached out like he wanted to take my hand, then stopped himself. "I miss you. I miss my little girl." "Your little girl died when her mother died," I said softly. "You just did not notice because you were too busy building a new family with people who hated her." Gerald started to cry, actual tears running down his weathered face. I watched him without moving. I had cried enough tears for both of us over the years. I had none left to spare. "I do love you, Harper," he managed. "I know I have done a terrible job of showing it. But I do." "Maybe," I said. "Maybe you love me in whatever way you are capable of loving. But that is not enough. It never has been." We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I spoke again. "I forgive you, Father. I need you to understand that. I am not holding on to anger. I am not plotting revenge. But forgiving you does not mean I am going to save you from the consequences of your choices. Please," he whispered. "I am begging you. I know you are. And I am sorry that you are in this situation. But I am not coming back. I am not going to rebuild your systems. I am not going to pretend the party never happened so that everyone can go back to treating me like I do not matter." I stood up and walked to my window, looking out at the city lights. "I will do one thing for you," I said. "I will give you the name of an IT company that specializes in construction industry software. They are good and their rates are fair. They can probably have you operational within 2 months if you act quickly." Gerald looked up. "Thank you," he said, his voice hoarse. "Can I call you sometime, just to talk?" I thought about it. Then I shook my head. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I need time to figure out who I am without constantly trying to earn your approval. I do not know how long that will take." He nodded slowly. "I understand." Then after a pause, "Your mother would be so proud of you, Harper." "She really would?" The words hit somewhere deep. I blinked back unexpected tears. "I know," I said. "She told me herself." Gerald stood up, leaving the wilted flowers on my coffee table. He walked to the door, then turned back. "I hope you find happiness," he said. "Whatever that looks like for you. Thank you, Father. I hope you find peace." He left. I closed the door behind him and stood there for a long time, my forehead pressed against the cool wood. Then I walked to my bedroom, crawled under the covers, and let myself grieve. Not for the father I had lost, but for the father I had never really had. The weeks after Gerald's visit were not easy. I had expected to feel triumphant, or at least relieved. Instead, I felt hollow. I went through the motions of my life, going to work, eating meals, exercising, but everything felt muted, like I was watching myself from a distance. I had spent so many years defining myself by my relationship with my father and his family. Now that the relationship was truly over, I did not know who I was anymore. The realization was terrifying. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I spent 3 days in my apartment, barely eating, sleeping at strange hours, crying at unexpected moments. I was mourning, I realized. Not just the loss of my father, but the loss of the fantasy that someday he would love me the way I needed to be loved. On the 4th day, I forced myself to shower and leave the apartment. I walked to a coffee shop I had never been to before and ordered a drink I had never tried. Small steps toward becoming someone new. In the coffee shop, I noticed a flyer for a support group. Adult children of toxic families, it said. Meetings every Tuesday at 7 p.m. I took a picture of it with my phone. The first meeting was awkward. I sat in the back of a community center room, surrounded by strangers, feeling exposed and foolish. But then people started sharing their stories. A woman whose mother had stolen her identity. A man whose parents had chosen his abusive brother over him. A young woman whose family had made her feel responsible for their financial problems since she was a teenager. I was not alone. The realization washed over me like warm water. There were others who understood, others who had been through similar pain, others who were also trying to heal. I started going every week. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma. I read books about setting boundaries and recognizing manipulation. I learned words for things I had experienced, but never been able to name: scapegoating, triangulation, emotional neglect. Understanding these concepts helped me see my history more clearly. Slowly, carefully, I began to open up to people at work. I had always kept my colleagues at arm's length, afraid of being hurt, but now I started accepting invitations to lunch, to happy hours, to weekend outings. I discovered that some of them were genuinely kind people who appreciated me for who I was, not what I could do for them. I started volunteering at a coding workshop for underprivileged teenagers. Teaching them felt like passing on something valuable, like planting seeds that might grow into something beautiful. One of my students, a 16-year-old girl named Destiny, reminded me of myself at that age. Hungry to learn, desperate to escape a difficult home situation, uncertain that anything good was possible, I became her mentor. 6 months after the party, I got a promotion. Not because I had worked myself to exhaustion, but because I had done excellent work while also maintaining boundaries. My new title was principal engineer. My new salary was more than I had ever imagined earning. I celebrated by buying myself flowers, the same kind my mother used to grow in her garden. I put them on my kitchen table and thought about how far I had come. News about my father's company trickled in occasionally. They had hired the IT firm I recommended and were slowly recovering. Gerald and Lorraine were still together, though I heard rumors that the financial stress had caused tension in their marriage. Brittany had gotten engaged to a wealthy older man, which seemed fitting somehow. I felt nothing but vague indifference toward these updates. They were characters from a chapter of my life that had ended. I wished them no harm, but I also had no interest in their story anymore. One day, about 8 months after the party, I received an email from my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, who had looked at the ground while my father disowned me. She apologized for not speaking up. She said she had been ashamed ever since. She asked if we could meet for coffee. I thought about it for 2 weeks. Then, I said yes. Our meeting was strained at first, full of awkward pauses and half-finished sentences. But Patricia had brought photographs of my mother, images I had never seen before. My mother as a teenager. My mother at her college graduation. My mother on her wedding day, glowing with happiness. Looking at those pictures, I felt something unlock inside me. My mother had existed before me and would continue to exist through me. Her love was not dependent on my father or Lorraine or anyone else. Her love was mine to keep forever. Patricia and I have lunch once a month now. She tells me stories about my mother's childhood, her quirks and dreams and fears. Through Patricia, I am getting to know my mother as a complete person, not just as the woman who died when I was 12. It feels like a gift I did not know I needed. My therapist says I am making remarkable progress. I am learning to trust, to connect, to believe that I deserve good things. It is not easy. Some days I still feel like that 12-year-old girl holding her mother's hand, terrified of being abandoned. But those days come less frequently now. I am starting to understand what my mother meant when she called me her brightest star. It was not about achievements or accomplishments. It was about the light inside me, the part that survived everything my father's family tried to do to extinguish it. That light is still there. It always was. Last month, I went on a first date for the first time in 2 years. His name is Marcus, and he is a veterinarian with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. I do not know if it will go anywhere, but the fact that I was willing to try feels like its own kind of victory. Today, sitting in my apartment watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, I can finally say that I am happy. Not perfectly happy, not fairy tale happy, but real solid earned happy. The kind that comes from knowing who you are and what you are worth. If my father called me tomorrow and apologized sincerely, I am not sure what I would do. Maybe I would give him another chance. Maybe I would not. The important thing is that my happiness does not depend on his choice. It depends on mine. My mother was right about so many things. She was right that I would do amazing things. She was right that I should never let anyone dim my light. And she was right in a way she probably never intended when she asked me to take care of my father. Because taking care of him ultimately meant walking away. It meant refusing to enable his weakness any longer. It meant forcing him to face the consequences of the choices he made. Sometimes love means staying, and sometimes love means leaving. The wisdom is knowing the difference. To anyone watching this who is in a similar situation, I want you to know something important. You are not alone. Your pain is real, and you have the right to walk away from people who hurt you, even if those people are family. Blood does not give anyone the right to treat you poorly. You deserve kindness, respect, and genuine love. It took me 28 years to learn that lesson. I hope it does not take you as long. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from a family member who hurt you? How did you find the strength to choose yourself? Drop your story in the comments below. Let us build a community of people who understand. If this story touched you in any way, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and know they are not alone. Subscribe if you have not already, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening to my story. Wherever you are, whatever you are going through, I hope you find your own light. I hope you find people who see your worth, and I hope you remember that you matter. Take care of yourselves. Until next time.